Hello and welcome to today's live. A very good afternoon. Hope you're having a good day and all set for a great weekend. I am Kinshuk Singh and my spouse and I are working parents to a 5-year-old. Our work life is extremely busy and demanding. And we live the same story every day, just like you, managing work, trying to raise a good human being, and the pressure of being a good enough parent. I'm sure all of you will relate to the story of rushed mornings with the child sitting with a glass of milk and tearful eyes, a very happy and excited child suddenly hiding behind a parent. The sudden outburst of the child at the school gate. We all have been through it. And also the joy of spotting a cow on the road. Can you relate to that? I'm sure. These are part of our everyday life as parents. And many such instances are regular stories at our play centers for child development and care too. These little expressions might be big emotions for our children, isn't it? Each child has a unique emotional language, whether it is negative or positive. And establishing a good parent child relationship depends upon understanding this language. It seems complex, but don't worry, we have you covered. Our expert today is talking about decoding the emotional language of your child. Meghna Yadav is our expert today. She is a child psychologist and a parenting coach. She comes with a rich experience of over 2 decades of counseling families and also taking care of preschool functions. We're so happy and glad to welcome Meghna to this webinar. So happy to see you, Meghna.
Thanks so very much, Kinshu. It's a pleasure. In fact, I feel privileged, I feel honored to be a part of these interesting discussions. And thanks to Clay for hosting such beautiful topics for parents. I totally relate as a mommy of two and as well as a professional working with children. So thank you so much for having me here today. I really look forward to hear more from the audience because call me a little greedy or selfish, but I get to learn a lot when we get the opportunity to interact with parents.
So true. So let's dive into the live, Meghna.
Sure, sure.
The first question that I want to ask you is about the basics. So let's begin with understanding what are emotions. We all understand basically what emotion means, but I would like to know the significance of the socio-emotional development in the overall development of a child. So would like to hear from you on this.
Wonderful question, and I'm so glad you are starting with basics because generally we say in child psychology, set your basics right, rest all will come automatically. So, thank you for starting with such interesting question. In fact, before I enter into answering your question, I, I I'll ask you a simple question as a mommy because I heard you when you were introducing yourself that you are blessed to be a mommy of 5-year-old Kinshu. Uh, do you want your child to be healthy? Tell me as a mommy.
Yeah, of course. But then again, health is a definition like overall health.
So you got your answer. You took the words out of my mouth. Whenever a parent is blessed to have a baby in hand, this is the most common feeling. The blessings that you shower on the child is that may God bless you with health and happiness. And trust me, these two things are not separable. In fact, they are synonym in today's world. And hence, I will answer your question with this only that yes, today the health is not only about the physiological well being, health in general is now a combination of emotional well being as well as body well being or physical well being. And these two are working like hand in mitten. We really cannot separate. We cannot segregate this when we talk about the human life. And trust me, Kinshuk, this is actually my 25th year in my professional life. And I can tell you very honestly that when I started working earlier, we did talk about these two aspects in different languages. We did talk about the physiological development, the neurological development on a separate platform, and emotional and social development on a separate platform. But with utmost proud, utmost happiness, I feel like science has come a long way in merging these two aspects together. And hence, those parents who really bless the children with health and happiness, those parents who really want their children to be successful, at peace in their long run of life, they must be sitting in the audience today because they know the value of socio-emotional development in children. And kudos to each and every parent who is sitting in the audience. Take a bow from me. You sitting here listening to this conversation talks volumes about your involvement as a parent in your child's life. And hats off to you. As I said, I'm also a mommy of two, and we all go through, like Kishuk said, the days really with the sunset and sunrise. We just don't know how the days go by. And amidst your busy schedule, if you have taken time out to attend this beautiful conversation today, you know the significance of socio emotional development. And I can go on and on, Kinshuk, about this. But if even if I have to give you a very simple scientific answer to this, I would say to all the parents who are listening, please understand a simple phenomenon, very simple, and I'll try my best to simplify that. If you take your right hand and you put it at the back, this is the brain stem. So, right now, you, me, every human being in this whole world grabs or accepts or attains the stimuli from here, which is the bottom part of the brain. This stimuli travel to the central part of the brain, which is the emotional brain, and then finally it travels to the front part of the brain, which is the logical brain. And this I'm giving a very simplified version for understanding, Kinshuk. So we need to understand that the first response to anything that we hear, we see, we receive in our brain is actually emotional. It travels from the back to here, and then it travels to here, which is the logical part. So emotions play a very crucial role in our responses, our reactions, how we are going to reply, how we are going to respond to a particular situation, be it pleasant, be it not so pleasant. Everything first goes over here, and it is more true for children because brain is still developing in early years, brain is still growing, attaining its maturity. So I would really recommend parents to do not underestimate the power of this part of the brain, because it really defines whatever the child responds with. I hope I could answer your question a bit, Kinshuk.
Wow, Meghna, I think your expertise and your experience helps you to translate such a scientific concept in such simple words. I'm sure the audience has been able to get your point there. Meghna, I understand in your profession you speak to a lot of families on a regular basis. And these days, communication is a big part of a parent child relationship. So, do you come across some preconceived notions or some myths that restrict the understanding between a child and a parent when it comes to emotions?
Mm. Interesting question, Kinshuk. Very right. In fact, thanks to Clay, I get the opportunity to interact with around 30 to 35 parents in a day on one-on-one basis as well as in group settings. Um, and I do see a similarity in some preconceived notions or some understanding. So there are some notions that worldwide studies have highlighted, and then there are some notions that I see on ground. And After working in various countries, Kinshuk, I seriously feel myself probably being the Indian parent. Indians are blessed to have a unique style of parenting. So some studies cannot be blindly generalized on the parenting style of Indians. We are blessed with our unique flavor. But I would say, yes, I do see certain notions with which parents come, and I see this more for emotions and emotional development. So while we are talking about decoding the emotional language, it's a good idea to be aware of these notions. You have asked a very beautiful question here, Kinshu, because the first step to understand the emotional language of children is to break the myth, is to come out of our preconceived notions so that we see it with a clean slate. Our lenses are not tilted. So I would tell you very basic things about these preconceived notions that studies have highlighted in child psychology. And I do see them, I hear them multiple times when I get to interact with parents. And the first thing that I see is, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, but parents tend to uh, talk about emotions or understand the emotions very much like feelings. They believe that emotions, it's all about feelings. But actually, it is not stopping there. It's not only there. It is actually much more than that. It's beyond that. So even if you go by the socio-emotional language, or even if you go by the socio-emotional learning of various programs that we see right now as part of curriculum, they are not only talking about feelings, they are actually not only talking about emotions. So the very first myth that I would like parents to be aware of is that emotional development or emotional language is not only about feelings, it actually talks about self-awareness, it talks about self-management, it talks about social skills. It also has elements of relationship building, the communication and the connection between people. And it also talks about the crucial decision making capacities, the leadership skills. So, very first thing that we need to be aware of parents, as parents, is that emotional development is not only about the development of feelings, it's actually a bigger umbrella to understand. The second myth that I come across quite many times is that parents sometimes come to me and they say, oh, the child will understand it on his or her own. This will come naturally. Well, emotions are internal, emotions are natural, but then they are interactive. They process with the surrounding. So, parent year, to me as a mommy, it came as a good surprise that when I studied these research across globe, that yes, emotions are natural, but there is a way for developing emotions in children, and parents do play a very crucial role in developing emotional intelligence in children, in making them more stable to find out what's there that the world has to offer for them when they grow up. So that's another myth that I would request parents to take note of, that yes, emotions are natural, but they do play a bigger role. And I think many of you will relate to this. Another myth that I see, Kinshuk, multiple times, in fact, while interacting with parents, is that it's I will handle emotions when I see the negative ones. So when a child is throwing a tantrum, or when the child is going through certain challenges like getting bullied at school or not having enough socialization opportunities, or is not making good friends, or hiding behind the parent when sees a stranger, that's when parents think that, oh, I need to get involved. I would use this wonderful platform of clay centers for child development and care, that let's not wait till the time you see something like that. The day to day activities and the day to day things that matter, these are positive ones, help a lot in building the emotional sanity of the child. So let's go for this. And the last but not the least, because I know there are young parents, they use focus a lot on the development of the child. And as I said, Indian parenting has its unique flavor. And sometimes in the humdrum of developing children, we end up focusing more on academic growth, academic skills of children. And in fact, I'm quoting a daddy I heard yesterday, and he said, Meghna, so the academic skills, the problem solving skills are the hard skills. The child has to know it. Emotions and all are the soft skills. And in fact, I couldn't stop myself as a child psychologist, Kinshuk, and I told the daddy dear, let's call them as essential skills, if not soft skills, because sometimes parents perceive it that, oh, it's all about academics. My child will be successful, will make it big in life only by acads. And trust me, especially the studies in last decade clearly highlight that the emotional stability or the emotional intelligence contributes significantly in academic success of children. So instead of differentiating between hard skills and soft skills, I would rather say hard skills and essential skills. But I think this is something where we really need to think through as parents.
So true, Meghna. I think emotional skills and socio-emotional development of a child contributes hugely to life skills in general. And as it is said, academics and what you do in your professional life eventually is one thing, but being a good human being is paramount. And the socio-emotional development of a child is surely going to contribute towards it, and that starts with an understanding parent, a parent who listens with open eyes and ears to the child.
Exactly. And I'm glad you can relate with this. In fact, when this
Come.
daddy was talking to me in Kinshuk, I realized that I had a similar kind of conversation with my partner, because as per him, it's all about schooling and the grades and the academic achievement of children. And I always say that emotional development builds that foundation on which the academic success takes its course. So we cannot underestimate the powers of emotional stability, the emotional equilibrium of children.
Correct, Meghna. So when talking about the importance and the power of emotional development of children, how does a parent overcome this hurdle if they think that they see a challenge in this domain of development of the child? How do they overcome it? Is there a way? Is there a formula that you have to decode the child's emotional language, or just how does it work?
I wish we had a formula, Kinshuk. I wish in psychology 2 plus 2 is 4. Unfortunately or fortunately, only God knows, uh, that it is actually not that straight. Human brain is really a complex puzzle to solve, and we cannot generalize this. In fact, before we enter into finding these areas where we can break the myth and find and respond in the right way to contribute in the child's development of emotions, as parents, I would say, parent here, I can only share what studies highlight, or I can only share which we have applied with around 500 plus parents, and see the results coming out. But I would also request all the parents to keep this discussion in mind with one simple fact, that each child is unique, each family is unique. So I would request every parent to filter what works in your family thread, what works in your particular frame of parenting, how you want to raise your child. So whatever we are discussing right now, I would really request you to keep this in mind, that you are the best judge. You know your child best. I can only share some general information, and I would really recommend you to please take a note of the fact that pick what works best for you. But to answer this wonderful question, Kinshuk, uh, I might take a couple of minutes because the answer is actually long. But I know questions are coming up, and we are receiving questions from audience. You must be waiting to ask those as well. So please allow me a couple of minutes to answer this. But the first thing that I would request parents to take note of, that if you really want to contribute positively and if you really want to support your child in emotional development, the very first thing to take note of, and the most important, I would say, is a concept called emotional contagion. Let's not go by jargons. I'll try my best to simplify this for parents. So, emotional contagion is very much, if I have to simplify, the way you catch colds. Like like if I am carrying a virus and I have a cold and having symptoms, and if anyhow we exchange hands, or if we really get the opportunity to interact, we saw that in pandemic recently, so then we passes the germ, and then this journey goes on. In fact, emotional contagion, not a very great way to explain, but the simplest way to explain works like that, that you carry your own emotions in you, and the moment you work with your child in day-to-day basis, you pass your emotions knowingly or unknowingly. This is emotion contagion. Your children are imbibing what you are going through. You are passing through your happiness, you are passing through your worries, your anxieties to children without knowing that. So that is emotion contagion. And I would request parents that if you really want to contribute and if you really want to prepare your child to fight the real battles of life, I keep saying this to many parents, it's easy to pass the paper on the exam. Sometimes it is difficult to pass the paper of life. So if you really want your children to be ready to face the real battles of life, the very first thing to keep note of is that emotion contagion is an established concept by science, and how it works is through mirror neurons. So what are mirror neurons? Basically, we have these brain cells where children imbibe what's happening into the adult in front of them, and it starts from birth. It starts from birth, parents. So please don't think that your infant in your lap is not able to understand your anxiety. You are passing those on. If you are happy, your child is actually feeling that happiness in him or her. So please take note of that very concept, the mirror neuron. And mirror neurons are an established concept. You must have seen, and in fact, there are interesting studies, Kishore, if parents want to read more about this concept. You must have seen one person yawning and then the other person starts yawning. Children do, infants have especially shown you put your nose like that and then they follow the same. The wrinkles on the eyebrow, infants actually respond the same, and these all are rooted in mirror neurons. These are very basic brain cells. So that's one important thing, parents, to take note of, that if you really want to contribute, check your own emotions. The second thing that I would request parents to take note of is emotional display. Again, let's not get confused by these words. Basically, what we are trying to say over here is that the more you label the emotions, the more you have a word to a feeling, the better is the absorption of the emotions, or better is the absorption of intelligence, which is related to emotions in children. So label it, name it to tame it is actually a great phrase for emotions. So the moment you see a child upset, it's a great idea to say, yeah, buddy, I see you getting upset of losing that toy. So this upset is actually labeling the emotion. I see you jumping of joy. So the joy is actually the labeling of the emotion. And I would request parents to take note that emotional vocabulary is has a mantra, and the mantra is you cannot teach it, you have to use it. So, parents, please take note of the fact that thank you, please, these kind of words can never be taught to young children. You can only make them a part of your conversation, and children will start using them as naturally as possible. So, I repeat this particular concept. You cannot teach it, you really have to use it in your own language so that children imbibe and do this. Apart from the emotion contagion, emotional display, one more important thing, parents, and that is actually needed in today's world much more than earlier days. And I see this need quite often while working with parents on ground is the emotional regulation. How do I process the emotions that are not very pleasant? How do I manage my anger? How do I manage my disgust, my fear, my anxieties? And these emotional regulations are mostly uh, really a reflection of how adults behave, especially in first 80 years of life. So if you are able to handle your anxieties, if you are not able to control your anger and ended up shouting to somebody in a road rage, unfortunately, your child is listening that, your child is learning that. So how do you process your own emotions, and especially how do you maintain your calm in tough times? That passes on to children unknowingly or knowingly. Also, the demo part, like once you start labeling it, then it is a good idea to say, oh, I am actually concerned about it, but this is the route I am taking, this is what I am doing. I'm afraid I might be late for the meeting, but I will inform the participants well in advance that I am running late by 10 minutes. So these are the ways, very day to day conversations, but these are the ways where you tell them how to regulate your anxieties, how to regulate your fears. Wonderful ways. Simple courtesy, like elevator opening up and you entering it inside it without allowing the people to come out. You are basically giving a wrong message to the child, and child is imbibing. The biggest challenge I think the parenting poses on you is that you are in a kind of CCTV 24/7 because your children are watching you all the time. So emotion regulation is also another aspect that we need to keep in mind. And last but not the least, parents, this is a pattern that we see nowadays. Children have entered into a phase that everything is coming to them on a platter, everything is coming very easy to them, and they do not understand the struggles of life at time. And as parents, we really need to be cautious about that, and a wonderful way to check that is to appreciate process, not the person. Sometimes when we really want to praise our child, the efforts that the child has put in to achieve something, we end up saying simple phrases like, or simple sentences like, oh, you are smart, oh, you look beautiful, oh, you are a great girl, oh, a good boy. And these are the ways where we are telling or personifying some traits in children, which I would not recommend to follow blindly. Instead, focus on bringing the concept of processes. Oh, I saw you were putting so much effort in solving that puzzle, is a better way than to say, oh, you are smart. So you are focusing on the process rather than the person. Oh, this color looks good on you. Again, process, not, oh, you look beautiful. So we really need to change our own sentences, our own conversations, and that's when it passes on to children. And small body languages and gestures go a long way, Kinshuka. In fact, I would give you one simple example, which I shared with the mommy recently, that even if you are typing an email, or you are attending a phone call, or you are just rolling chapati and the child comes from the back and say, Amma, this happened to me in the school today. The simple thing that you need to do is to stop what you are doing. Take a pause. So keep the phone away, stop typing the email, stop rolling the chapati, turn your body towards the child a little, and then say, mm-hmm. You are basically respecting the child's emotions and the message that the child is giving to you. And then you can continue doing what you are doing. You can type again, you can roll the chapati again. But the simple tilt towards the child, the body language, looking into the eye of the child and then saying, mm-hmm, and then continuing, tells the child that I should share my emotions more. I should share my feelings more, and this go a long, long way. Parent dear, if you have young children, trust me, you will need it more when your children enter into teenage. So invest in this bond right now. It's a long answer, Keshov, but I tried my best to give those daily tips that parents can imbibe right away after the session.
I think I got my answer, Meghna. When I asked you that I am looking for a formula to decode the child's emotional language, but I did get a formula, which is practice before you preach, probably. So all that you said, I can summarize most of it into this one line. Whether it
Oh,
is your
Lakshmi.
body language or
Yeah.
your words, or simple things like road rage and your etiquettes while entering a lift. These are such small everyday things which we are all guilty of going wrong at.
Well, I won't say that we are not noticing or so, but I would say it is a wonderful idea to be little more aware of what you are doing and giving words to the actions like upset, like joy. I gave you some examples because children will have to learn the emotional language, emotional vocabulary. They have to build it. And the way you are telling the basic languages to your children, in whatever language you converse with your child, the similar way develop an emotional language. It goes a long way, Kinshuk. I'm glad if you found these tips useful as a mommy.
You don't know how useful your tips are here. I'm sure the audience will agree too.
Happy to hear that.
That brings another question to my mind, Meghna.
Sure.
That what we have been talking about until now mostly pertains to younger children. So, does this understanding of the expression and communication of the emotions, does this change over time as children grow up? Because I see parents of teenagers struggling in their own way with the children. So, how does this change, and how do parents deal with that?
Mm. You might laugh on this, Kinshuk, but because I myself being a mommy, I'm living with a teenager, and I know what you are saying. I sometimes laugh with parents, and I say the crucial years to invest in parenting is actually from 0 to 12 years, and after 12th birthday of your child you pretty much watch the movie that you created in last 12 years. That's not to dishearten the parents of teenagers. I'm one of them, so I really would say no, it's not that you cannot do anything about it. But what I'm trying to say, especially to those parents who have younger children, this is the window of opportunity. This is the time when you invest in your bond with your children because you will need it when they enter into teenage. The emotional bonding happening in early years will help the teenagers to really stay connected with parents. So, my humble request to all the parents who have younger children, don't miss this bus. Really, don't miss this window of opportunity because this is where you will see the results that will stay for a longer period of life. But yes, you are right. Emotions, the feelings won't change much to answer your question, Keshuk. The love is the very basic essence of human life. Every child needs love, be it a newborn, then a 3 year old, or a 7 year old, or a teenager who might portray that I don't need the love, but trust me, the teenager needs the love. So, for sure, I would say certain emotions, certain requirements of support, affection, care stay throughout. They don't change much. But yes, it changes in shapes and expressions. So, for sure, we see this happening, and we see this happening a lot in various fronts as well. That sometimes children and teenagers they are not able to express their real emotions. They are really not able to express what they need, and that's why I say the early years investment to help children when they have emotional vocabulary, they will come back to you. So yes, it changes with age, but if you have younger children, a wonderful, wonderful idea is to invest in the emotional vocabulary, like I said, and one thing that parents can take in mind is that this is the theory of mind that we hear. Emotions are more started within, like they are internal, like I said. So emotions are more about self awareness, self management, and also about the very basic concept of managing emotions when you move into social circle. And all this can be easily trained to younger ones with one simple concept which we call as egocentrism and animism. So egocentrism is basically a good idea is to talk to children about the various aspects through them. So mama gets sad the way you get sad when you shout. So it's a wonderful idea to bring the concept of your feelings, how you feel. Egocentrism is all about the child thinks about self. So you might have heard in past, even with your younger one, Kinshuk, is that um, when you ask simple questions like why the color of the grass is green, and children might end up answering that, hey, because it's my favorite color. So these are wonderful ways to take note of that. Parents need to start talking from the child's perspective first and then move on to the larger society. Animism is basically giving life to the objects that are not having life. Example like giving a life to a car, giving life to a toy. And these are wonderful ways to build emotions in children. So in fact there is a very famous example of this, that a girl sitting in the back of the seat while daddy dear is driving the car, and they had a bump and the car felt the jerk. So the daughter said, daddy, drive slow, car gets hurt. And this is a wonderful way. She's giving life to an inanimate object, which is car. And animism is a wonderful way to start from the early years to bring the concept of emotions. Of course, you can't do these conversations with older children, but begin over there. But please be ready. Sometimes for teenage parents, we say that they portray as if they don't need you, but trust me, teenage is the time when teenagers need parent much more than any other age group. So keep that in mind for sure.
Great, Meghna. I think one thing that stays by me throughout this live is that communication is the key to understanding your child better. Like we talk about in our corporate lives, that communication is very important to have a good relationship at work and performance at your workplace. I think communication is the key here as well. The more you
True.
talk to your child, the more you listen to your child. Communication both ways, that
Yeah.
plays a huge part.
I'll just add a couple of words to what you said. Not only talking to the child, but I would say participative talks. That means you are responding to the child,
Right.
and not only listening to your child, but actually actively listening to your child. So you, when you tell the child that, hey, I'm interested in what you are saying, that's when the emotional development happens at its peak.
Correct, so true, Meghna. We see a lot of insightful questions coming up from our audience,
Wow.
so let's start taking them up.
For sure, I'm waiting for this section, Kinshuk. In fact, that's what I said in the beginning. It actually motivates me to study more so that I can answer these questions. So
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Yeah, so the first question is from the mother of a 4-year-old girl.
Awesome.
And the question says, in most instances, I do understand when my child is overwhelmed.
Uh-huh.
However, I am not always able to pinpoint the trigger. So, what is more important at the moment, to figure out the trigger or to empathize with my child's emotions?
Wonderful, wonderful question, Kinshuk. And I would say this is something which we really need to understand from a little bit of scientific lens. So whenever there is a challenging behavior or something which is unpleasant as per your understanding or inappropriate as per your understanding, keep three stages in mind. The very first stage is in the movement strategy. In the movement strategy is basically when the child is actually throwing the tantrum, when the child is going through that phase which is unpleasant. Parent here, you might not like my answer, but I'll stay honest here, is that you actually can't do much in that moment. So, in that moment, please focus on staying calm. That's the only solution. Please maintain your patience as much as possible. Don't get conscious that people are judging you as a parent because your child is throwing a tantrum. Even if there are people around you who think like that, you should not get bothered as a mommy or daddy about it. So, my humble request to all the parents in the movement, especially this mom, in the movement, just don't try to do much. But then don't forget the other two stages. The one stage is the pre, and another one is the post. So, what do I mean by that? Before the tantrum. So, parents, it's a wonderful thing, and I think this is a natural blessing to mommies and daddy that you know that my child is entering into a tantrum now. You know, in that moment that, oh, if I do not get this candy right now, in the next minute my child will be howling on the floor. You know that, right? So I would heavily recommend parents to be watchful in this pre stage, which is just before the tantrum. Please try to maintain the words and the communication as simple as possible. So at this time, buddy, you got the candy yesterday, you can only get it once a week, so today no, it's not possible. So before you say no, it's a good idea to be very watchful that can I say no in this moment. And if you have said no, please do not change it. Please, even if a sky falls, don't turn your no into yes. So that is for sure. So lay out the rules very clearly to the children and then converse about it. Post is like after a gap of 4 hours, the last and the third stage. A wonderful idea is to talk, go back to your child and use emotions. So at that time, you should talk about the emotional aspects of this trigger or all that. And you use your hand, put it on your heart and say, Mama felt sad. Daddy felt sad when you were misbehaving. How could we help you? How could we change it? And then get into these kind of conversations and use your emotions if you have children younger than age 8. If you have children between 8 to 12, a wonderful idea is to go bring logic and talk to them straight away that, hey, this was unacceptable. You could have behaved differently, and use your words appropriately in these conversations. If a child is really crossed 12th birthday and still into the zone where there are emotional outbursts, a wonderful idea is to keep these three stages in mind in the movement pre and post. But if during the discussion in the post stage, post the event, a great idea to have a kind of official meeting atmosphere where you invite everyone in the family, sit on a table and discuss about it. I would not recommend any day to totally ignore it. If it really is something very important to you, have a little more conversation which looks official. Teenagers imbibe that best.
True. I think, Meghna, unknowingly, you have answered a lot of questions that are coming up. I can see a sea of questions. Quite a few of them talk about the child being snobbish and how do parents control them, the child throwing things around and what to do about it. I think your answer now answered a lot of those questions as well.
Well, these are very, as I said, Kinshu, these are very general suggestions. So sometimes we need to dig deeper in case to case basis. So, all those parents who are really struggling about it and children are showing these kind of behavioral traits multiple times, then I would heavily recommend to dig deeper into the persona, dig deeper into the situations, into the triggers. As I said, we can only share some generalized points. But a wonderful idea to parents I would heavily recommend is to observe your child. And there is something called ABC chart. So those of you who have frequent outbursts, because you said there are sea of questions on these lines, I'll quickly share. ABC chart is basically antecedent, behavior, and conclusion. Parents make this chart, paste it on your refrigerator or a place where you have frequent conversations around so that you can quickly write down your points and just note down. Antecedent is basically what was happening before the tantrum. Behavior, what exactly the child did, like threw himself on the floor or banged the head on the wall or spit on my mouth. These are the behaviors. And consequences, what exactly happened after this. Did you talk to the child, or the child settled down himself or herself, and things like that. So once you have this chart, you can approach any professional. I'm sure you will get many more benefits if you have this chart handy. But it's a good idea to record such outbursts if they are happening again and again.
Makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Our next question, Meghna, talks about emotional intelligence. So, can you please share some tips for developing emotional intelligence?
I think our session was more or less about that. We did discuss
Yeah,
emotional intelligence has multiple aspects to it. Social emotional learning also has these five basic domains that I shared with you while answering one of the questions of Kinshu. They start about self awareness, then move on to self management. Then it talks about the social skills and relationship building. And finally, the fifth element is about decision making. So most of SEL, so those parents who are really, really interested can read more about it, socio-emotional learning. No harm in knowing more about it. These are the ways, five parameters where we focus on building the emotional intelligence. But the solutions that I shared with you, be it emotional contagion, be it emotional display, emotional vocabulary building, appreciation of the process, not the person. These were the ways where I was actually answering your question about emotional intelligence.
correct. Thank you, Meghna. The next question says, my son is 3 years old and
Uh-huh.
cries randomly by remembering some old incident. He becomes inconsolable if we try to hug him, touch him, to try to calm him down. He pushes us away. How do we handle this?
Uh, this is happening, parent dear. With due respect to your parenting style, most of the time we see this happening because parents are not investing in this post stage strategy that I just shared. Parents actually end up responding in the moment instead of waiting for 4 hours and then responding to the event. And that's when children keep coming back to the previous episodes. So my very first answer to your question would be to keep these three strategies in mind. Discipline is a very positive phenomenon. I don't know how in Indian parenting it get got into negative connotation, Kinshu, but trust me, these are the disciplinary strategies that we train parents on. And in fact, I have trained around 800 plus parents on these three strategies and getting great results. In clay itself, I have done that and getting great results. So, parents, please keep this in mind that in the moment, try to maintain your calm, patience. Don't use your words much. Be available to your child, but don't invest much. But then don't forget the beauty of the post the event strategy. So give a gap of around 4 to 5 hours to your child. Your 3 year old is ready to converse on these lines, that you put a hand on your heart and say, Mama felt sad, Daddy felt sad, and then you discuss about it, how the child would have behaved differently, talk on those lines. So for sure, the higher the post the event strategy implemented in family, the lower will be the episodes in the future. So this is a simple phenomenon. You should try this. Apart from that, if a child has a habit of going back to the previous episodes, you have to target it exactly in the same way. And how do you do that? Parents, there are some cultures where people end up reading a book at the bedtime. I would request you to have your unique addition to it. And please, instead of reading a book to your child, you tell your own life stories to them. So use the bedtime, especially for your child. This parent, I would heavily recommend use this bedtime story period as a bedtime real life period where you share your own stories, where you share your struggles. Mama was late today in reaching for a meeting. I was stuck in a traffic jam. Oh, I was exhausted. I'm really looking forward for this Friday. Oh, I have plans to visit my friend. All these things and your own childhood story. We used to do that. We used to jump here, go there. We stayed overnight with that auntie. This is the how we used to celebrate festivals. All these things go a long way. So when you feed your child's memory, this part of the brain, with the pleasant ones, with your own stories, there is a tendency that the child will relate more with that and will tend to forget the negative episodes in such cases. So try this. This should help you. For sure, it will help you. In fact, I would say that. And the third strategy that you can apply right away to your child is actually getting into some activities that involve music and movement. Children who have a habit of bringing back the episodes and then throwing tantrums and then get inconsolable, there is something which we call as bottom up stress regulating system, where if you move your feet and have rhythmic movement like dancing or basically jumping around, gymnastics, where your hands and body, the lower part of the body, gets into movement, it actually pacifies the brain over here. So your child needs that. I would heavily recommend to enroll your child in something like that, where in the routine way the child is getting exposed to the lower part of the body movements like dancing, jumping, gymnastics, where the thighs, the knees, the legs, and the feet get into movement. So music and movement will help your child a lot.
That's such a beautiful way how you connect, different developmental domains and different aspects of growth of a child to their emotional intelligence and emotional development. That's so beautiful. Thank you, Meghna.
Thanks
I
to the
hope it
science,
helps the parent.
Kishuk. I think thanks to all the psychologists and scientists who work for hours in labs and we get the benefits on land. So thanks to all those people.
Oh, yeah. Um, so our next question is from the mother of a 8-month-old child, a daughter, who cries sensitively when she hears other children crying at home or at daycare, and without even seeing their faces. So, what should be done in this situation?
Ah, this is basically rooted in a beautiful human concept. I must congratulate this parent. You are blessed with a highly empathetic child, and this beautiful concept is actually empathy. So nourish it as much as possible. But I know the pain as a mommy when your child starts crying while seeing other children crying. So I would really, really request you to understand that children need time to process certain emotions. I might sound little scientific here, but most of the time, when the child is born or in infancy, children have two major emotions. One is attraction, and second one is withdrawal. There are studies that highlight that gradually in human bodies enter into six major primary emotions, and then there are secondary emotions. I don't want to confuse the audience here, Kinshuk, but where I'm coming from is that the parents need to understand that in infancy, because you said it's only 8 months old child, right? So infancy, please focus on two major emotions, attraction and withdrawal. So the child is attracted for all the pleasant experiences like mommy cuddling me, mommy feeding me, or daddy singing to me, or grandma singing a lullaby to me. All these things are attractive phenomenon for an infant. Withdrawals, if you leave me in dirty diaper, if I'm hungry and nobody is listening to my cry, or if other child is crying and I'm getting perturbed with that noise. So these are withdrawal emotions. So parent dear, in infancy, you might feel that my child is crying out of sadness. But actually, it's not sadness. It might be a concern. It might be a feeling of disgust. It might be a feeling of discomfort. So, very first thing that you need to know, and that's why I said the answer is little scientific here, Kinshuk, is that these crimes are related in an umbrella of withdrawal. So we really need to be cautious when we judge or we label the cries of infants. I would say, parent dear, don't worry much about it. Your child is blessed to be empathetic, and that's a very positive trait. And in fact, the world needs more and more empathetic people around this beautiful planet. So I would say, don't worry much. This is something which is not rooted in sadness. This might be a cry for discomfort, or that I don't want to hear that noise, right? So this will grow, and the child will come out of this after the 14th month or 15th month. If it stays after that, then I would heavily recommend you to take professional help. But right now, I would not recommend you to get worried about it. The best thing that works when children cry out in this withdrawal or out of disgust or out of discomfort is to be around them and do not underestimate the power or the miracle of touch. So, what you have to do, just take your hand and the wrist of the baby, just rub like this. This is a wonderful phenomenon to pacify the child if the cry is rooted in discomfort.
Wow, beautiful. I loved how you said that we can pacify the child by rubbing the hand. Wow.
Yeah, miracle
Yes.
of touch. In fact, this is applicable to all the children. If you really have a child who is throwing a tantrum, just staying next to the child. In fact, I would recommend parents, if you are really, really busy in your official or business commitments, a wonderful idea is to sit next to the child, make sure that the body, skin to skin touches there. Child feels amazing.
That's really interesting to know, Meghna. I really have a sea of questions in the comment box, but unfortunately, I'll not be able to take up all the questions. There are a few questions about anxiety, separation anxiety in children. I would like to request these parents to go and watch our previous lives. We've covered a couple of sessions on this topic. So I think that would help your questions being answered there. Before I close, one question that makes me smile is a parent asks, "What is the end age for tantrums?"
That's such a beautiful question. Kudos to you, parent dear. I really wish world had an answer to that. I think the science is yet to progress on that. Thank you for asking this beautiful question. But one thing I can tell you, tantrums are actually an exhibition of emotions. So the exhibition of emotions might vary, might change shapes, might change its flavors as we grow, but that does not mean that it will go to zero. So I sometimes end up throwing tantrum to my husband. I am in mid 40s, so I really don't know when will I end as a human being. But that was on the lighter note. But yes, scientifically, we see that when children are in phases, when children are going through growth spurts and hormonal changes, that's when the tantrums are at its peak, and we see gradual, gradual decrease in tantrums once children are out of these growth spurts. Generally, these growth spurts are between 2 to 5 years old, and then between 10 to 12 years, and then we see another one generally between 14 to 18. So keep these ages in mind, because your road might be little more bumpy when your child is going through these age groups. But overall, if you ask me, the exhibition of emotions should not stop. In fact, I would say, because emotions are also positive, not only negative. But negative exhibition or the tantrums do reduce generally after ninth or 10th birthday. What you see in early years, you won't see in later years, because children tend to understand the concept of emotion regulation, which I explained to you while answering Kinshuk's question about how do we work around it. So keep that in mind. But please be ready. Tantrums do change their shape, but if you ask me that whether they will reach zero, no, no science has solved it yet, and humans keep showing uh, or exhibiting emotions, both positive and not so positive.
Great, Meghna. I must say the audience here today is so woke, and like you said, the level of engagement does tell that these parents are extremely involved parents and really concerned about the growth and development of their children. Uh, I'm so happy to have them in our audience today.
Exactly.
Meghna,
I must congratulate. I said this in the beginning, I'll say this again, that you sitting here listening to this conversation clearly indicate that you are heavily involved in the upbringing of your child. Kudos to you. I'm sure world will be a better place if parents are so involved with children from early on. And thank you for asking such interesting question. As I said, sometimes my children laugh at me, Kinshuk, that in the whole home, the one person who studies most is Amma. So I think I study most because I should be ready to answer these type of questions. Thank you so much for motivating me so beautifully.
so true. I know, Meghna, such an insightful session cannot be summed up in a couple of sentences, but can you share, a couple of lines about some underlying guideline that parents must follow on a day-to-day basis to be able to connect with their children better emotionally?
Uh, I would say, Kishuk, to summarize our conversation is that uh, once a parent, always a parent. So even if you will enter into a phase where your children will say goodbye to you very soon and take up their own paths, which they should, uh, as parents, we need to understand that we are here with a limited period and the clock is ticking. Very soon, these children will say goodbye to us, and before that, parents, let's enjoy this beautiful gift of God. It is a very big blessing in your hand, in your home, and you are actually impacting their lives. And in fact, I say this to many parents, I'll say this here again, that the moment a child is born, the parent is also born on the same day. And trust me, both influence each other, both impact each other's life. And parents, allow your children to impact you beautifully, and do not miss the opportunities where you can impact them beautifully as well. And for that, take care of yourself to take care of your children. Invest in your own emotional health if you really want your children to be emotionally healthy and strong, and train them to fight the real battles of life. I might sound like a broken record, but I will say this again and again, that we need to prepare our children to stay strong and resilient, because life is not fair all the times.
So true. Another saying that comes up to my mind is that you cannot pour from an empty cup. So, parents, I think you must first seek to have an emotionally healthy life, a healthy emotional life for yourself. For that, to focus on your self care, seek help whenever required, and most of all, as Meghna said, parents and children both are blessed with a natural instinct. So do trust your instincts as a parent. I think
True, so true.
that will work wonders for your relationship with your children.
So true, Kinshuk, and no better way than to end this conversation. Thank you so much, parents, again and again, for listening to this conversation and participating so actively through your wonderful questions. I hope I could help some of the parents over here and you found this session useful. But do share your feedback, your inputs, and what all you want to hear. We might come again. We will bring these kind of conversations again to you, and it helps me to prepare better if we know what exactly you want to know more about. So, thank you so very much Uh, and thanks a ton for your beautiful messages coming over here. Uh, Thank you if you found this session useful. I just read a message from a grandma. Thank you so much. We seek your blessings. If you really, really found this useful, thanks a ton. I have lots to learn from you as well. This generation has done a beautiful job. So kudos to you and hats off to you. Thank you so much. Coming from a grandma makes my day.
So true. Thank you, Meghna, for the amazing session and your time this afternoon. For the parents whose questions we have not been able to take up, we'll try our best to get back to you with the answers for your questions in different formats. And if any of your friends have missed attending this session, please feel free to share it with them. The recording will be available on YouTube. So you can please share it with your friends and family whom you think will they'll benefit out of the session. So thank you to our audience for joining in and making the session so interactive. We feel blessed and so happy to have been able to address some of your questions. See you again with another live very soon. We'll sign off for now. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thanks, Satan Kinshuk. Have a great weekend, everyone. Happy parenting to each one of you.